Hello and welcome here again live at the World Crypto Network. We're today joined by two amazing people. First, we have the one and only Wookiee of Bitcoin. Here is JW Weatherman. What's up?
Hey, how's it going, man? Looking forward to the conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. And further, I do not know if he's on the microphone right now, but we do have Ricardo, based in Paris. What's up?
What's up, guys? Good evening. I just finished work. I'm an entrepreneur, so I got to work weird hours. But nothing, man. I really am glad to hear that you invited me to this phone call because this is somebody I really wanted to talk to, and I think people need to listen up because there's nothing more important than your own education. So, yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. Good points. Good points. And we will start off with this quote that Richard Porter, colleague of JW at mathbot.com, the one and only way to learn programming and mathematics. And it's a Plato quote, so this is a good one. So we are going to read this one right here. There should be no element of slavery in learning. Enforced exercise does no harm to the body, but enforced learning will stay in the mind. So avoid compulsion and let your children's lessons take the form of play. Isn't that so? And I 100% agree. As soon as you force people to get educated, they will blockade, like they will block off. They will not want to get all that information and they will not even try to understand it. If you really do want to educate someone, first you have to motivate them. Because if they are motivated, they actually do want to learn. And that is just so much more efficient. So JW, what do you say about that quote, and how can you, how can you make people motivated to learn?
Well, what I love about that quote is that he says, "Make it take the form of play," and even like all mammals play, right? Even rats play, and they wrestle with each other and tickle each other and stuff. So humans, we already play. We already want to explore. We already, like, you hand a 2-year-old a strange object and he's fascinated by it and he wants to pull on it and figure out how it's connected and see if he can break it or swallow it or, what he can do with it. I don't even think we have to motivate kids. I think that it's hardwired that kids love to problem solve and they love to explore the world around them and they love to ask questions and figure out how things work. So it's, I think, it's more a matter of just giving them the luxury of being able to play and do that, and to some degree giving them some good resources and some good teachers that will help guide their play in more interesting and fruitful directions. But yeah, I think the motivation's there. I think that's kind of the definition of education, or it has been classically, that having the ability to learn as the goal of education, and we've kind of redefined it through the state as being just a cookie cutter monkey that knows how to fill out forms and submit to authority, and that's called indoctrination, not education. So yeah, I think it's a great topic. I'm really glad that we're talking about it. And I love that quote. It made me feel stupid that I'm not reading more Plato, but Richard's a pretty brilliant guy. I've thought about that a few times since he tweeted it out a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is a good quote. And we're also joined quite spontaneously by the one and only Nico from Maximal Liberty. So Nico, what's up? And what do you think about education? And how can we motivate people to become or to get educated? I can't hear you. I think that's on your side. There we go, I think. Okay, well, let's Nico figure that stuff out. And I absolutely agree. And gamification is so important, JW. And how, like, specifically, can we gamify even advanced education, right? Because yes, gamifying counting, for example, is easy.
Yeah.
How about gamifying, for example, like quantum physics? Is that possible as well?
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit that I don't know a ton about quantum physics, but I will say that, like, Einstein learned math through Euclid's Elements, and Euclid's Elements is a book that like Einstein and Alexander the Great both learned math through the same book, which is incredible. I mean, it's a 2,000-year sort of bestseller in mathematics. And that book is all set up as if it's gamified, right? Like the very beginning, you get to assume you can draw a circle and you can draw a straight line. And then you slowly solve problems and work your way through and explore the relationship of shapes, just like a 2-year-old with a block in his mouth, right? You're just slowly figuring out how these things work together until you get all the way up through past discovering, at least the Pythagorean theorem. I can't remember how far it goes, but that's pretty profound. And I think what's great about that is if you go through that whole process, like you just have a much more intuitive grasp of the way that the world works and the way that mathematics works, and not just mathematics as in like solving a specific problem, but mathematics as in using logic and reason in the relationship of things and their definition to explore a space and find solutions to problems, which is far more valuable than any one particular math problem. So I think it's always been kind of gamified. I think the real question is, how do you de-gamify learning, right? How do you take what is naturally a problem-solving exploration of the universe and strip out all of the joy and all of the pleasure from it? And I think to answer that question, you really probably need to look at what the United States has done in the last 3 years, because they have reached the pinnacle of absolute pain and suffering and joy sapping when it comes to the Common Core curriculum now that they're pushing everybody in the United States to adapt to.
So I guess the government is good at one thing, and that is making education boring, which is actually quite useful, isn't it? So Nico, what's up? Is your microphone working? No, I don't think so. I don't think it is. So maybe plug it in. That might help. Rico, are you there yet?
I am. Thank you for waiting, you guys. I think what JW had said, I completely concur with. He picked up the same thing that I picked up, and that one word was play. And the reason why I think that education has been completely misconstrued is we no longer get to play. We no longer look at education as a means of how to further along your understanding of objects, people, yourself, the relation with the environment, but instead we're put in a box and you're graded on a curve, and those are numbers crunched. And I know in American schooling, it's really hard on a student to feel like they're not apt, but they could be really good at something else. And personally, through my own experience, I was homeschooled a little bit, public schooled, private schooled, and I found that in the end, even though I excelled really well in public schools, I didn't feel like it was a real way to learn things. And it isn't about being able to crunch numbers or memorize things over and over and over. That's not what education should be about. It's about being able to further yourself and more so just apply it in your life. Like whether it's finances, whether it's selling something, or whether it's relationships. And, even learning the guitar is something that just takes time, but being able to play and being able to maybe focus in on it rather than feel like you're forced in on it. Because when you're focused in on it, it's because there's something inside of you that's giving you a chemical reaction that's good for you. But when you're forced to do it, there's this teetering of this overhead. You have to hit these numbers. Especially if you're in advanced classes or and even if you're not in advanced classes, it just makes you feel like, oh, you're not smart enough to be in those classes. So you have this overhead dwelling cloud that you're no longer good enough, but it's just because you're being compartmentalized by who knows, these education boards that are based off of things, off these scan tests that it's not the real education that's not real education. It's not applied education. It's just repetition. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with all you said. And Nico, I think your microphone is working now. So what's up?
Hey, Max. Sorry about before. I was unplugged, and then for some reason, even when I plugged in, it still didn't work. But yeah, this is one of my favorite topics as well. And hey, guys, and JW, I really liked your math board. I was playing around with it for a while, and I'm definitely gonna put my kid on it once he's old enough. But like, I have a kid who is 3.5, and he's really interested in playing games. And I think playing games and gamification is super important in education.
Yeah, totally, man. I'm glad to hear that. Thanks for the feedback on MathBot. Yeah, I think, I mean, I know that a lot of people are really intimidated by trying to figure out what to do with their kids' education. But I'm an old guy now, and I've seen enough kids get educated to where it's not intimidating at all for me. And the main thing that I would just tell everybody is don't just don't fall for all of the like buckets of lies that and all the snares that are laid out for you. Like, if you actually care about your kid, you're going to educate your kid just fine. So don't feel like you couldn't homeschool your kid or you don't have time for that. Now, there's obviously like people that are in really bad financial circumstances, but even if you're in really bad financial circumstances and you've got a 2-year-old, you've got like 3 or 4 years to get out of those bad financial circumstances. You know, if you're a single dad or something, you've got 4 years to find a wife, right? Like, get on it, because you do not want to end up in a situation where you're dropping your kids off at these little prison camps that they call schools. That, you know, if you look at these things from far enough away, they're indistinguishable from prisons, right? Like in the United States, they must be made by the same people, the same contractors, because you really can't tell the difference. A lot of times it's really disturbing how, you know, there's like a really long line of sight, right? Like, and there's like a really nice tall fence with, you know, in many cases, barbed wire that's pointed inwards, right? Like, how many hints do you people need to know that this is not a good circumstance to put your kids in? And there's so many different angles that I could take, but like the quality of the teachers, like they're not overpaid or they're not underpaid, they're overpaid. These are the dumbest people that we have in our society, and they work 9 months a year, right? And they have all these teacher days and all this stuff. So you're not putting your kids, even in private schools, right? You're not putting your kids with the smartest people in our society. You're putting them with the dumbest people, and you're putting them with people that are often very immature, right? Like take a 9-year-old boy and then take 20 or 30 or 40 of them and put them in a room with a 26-year-old girl, and let's see how things work out. Like, that's not, you don't have to be a genius to know that the amount of testosterone and energy in that circumstance is not going to play well, unless there's a lot of like psychological abuse, right? Like the 26-year-old girl, she does have some tools in her you know, satchel, but they're not the sort of things that you want her to use, right? Like she can't really punish your kids in any way that would be healthy. So she's going to be resulting, or, you know, falling back to things like picking out. And in a lot of cases, they teach teachers to do this stuff, right? Like, you've got an unruly group, pick one and shame him, right? Like, and then all the other kids, you know, you get all the other kids on your side. Like, it's a little bit like Survivor or some reality TV show, the way that these people have to run the classrooms. And it's not all their fault, right? Imagine that you're a below average IQ person working at a private school. You're a 26-year-old girl. You've never been the sharpest knife in the drawer. And now you've got 20 boys that you have to keep under control. Like, I almost don't blame you for playing the prison games when you're in prison like that. But we shouldn't, I don't know. What I'm trying to do in some of this is just pull off the veneer that, and all of the propaganda that we've been washed in, that the police and the teachers are just the best people in the world, and they love you, and they're smart, and they're educated, and they're going to take care of your kids. Like, that's just not the reality. And I think if you just look at the cold, hard truth of any one of those things, right? It's pretty obvious that even if you can only focus on your kid for a couple hours a day, and you actually love them, and you can teach them how to read, and then they can read books. Like, you don't actually have to do that much. You mostly just have to protect your kids. That's the most important part.
Absolutely, yes. And you know, you said it, the teachers themselves, they went to government school, and all that they experienced was government education, which, you know, we talked about is not that good. So those people, yeah, they do have some knowledge, but it's not that advanced. And JW, you also said earlier that most of, or that it's not that difficult to homeschool your kids. And I would agree, because, you know, let's go back and see how education really works. It's called the trivium, right? You have external information that can be provided by any book, honestly. Any book, any YouTube video, anything that is external, any lecture, any podcast, whatever. That is external information. And that is all that like we other people can help the student to get, is information. And that's what universities and schools used to be all about, because they had the libraries of all the books. So the students had to come to university to get the information. Well, guess what? We now have the biggest library ever in your pocket, 24/7. And you know, this is information is no longer a selling argument for universities, for schools. So that falls apart, right? And so what else can the people do externally, right? Well, not that much, because the next step in the trivium is understanding. And understanding comes from the mind, heart, and gut. And that is not something that anyone can help you with. You can be as you know, as motivated as you like to support students on their way from the information stage to the understanding stage. But I mean, you know, that's not something that you can do. I cannot force you to understand anything. Understanding is internal. I can provide you the information packaged in such a way that you, you know, that it might help with the understanding, but still, understanding has to come from the internal part, right? And then, you know, the trivium finishes up with actual action. So if you have that understanding, sitting around and not doing stuff will not help. That will not improve the world. What will actually change things is when you go out and do something with your knowledge, with your understanding. And that is then wisdom. So wisdom, being wise, is only the person that goes out there and does stuff. And he doesn't just do random stuff. No, he actually knows what he's doing. He understands what he's doing. And that is something that not many people do. So absolutely, the only thing that external universities, external schools can do is provide information. All the information we want is out there. So Rico, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, you said something that's a really key factor in this world and age. We have something that nobody else has had before, and that's technology. That's at the palm of your hands. You can Google, you can DuckDuckGo, you can go to town on research. You socially, you can do it. And the craziest thing is, you've got 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds who are learning college degrees. You've got 13-year-old entrepreneurs. The thing is, you guys, we're in an unprecedented time, so that's what's different in history. We need to realize that this isn't back in the days where there's no way to communicate across the world or anything. We have this. So it makes me back to think about European schooling, Australian schooling. They're trying to push the level of, not so much that level of information they're trying to push out, but more so like, they should learn another language. In Europe, pretty much 90% of people speak English, which is great, so for people who are American. But I was kind of got off my mind. I couldn't think of what I was going to say. But yeah, I think technology has changed the entire game. And that's what I was going to say. Look at the pattern of entrepreneurs. Look at the pattern of the people in history that created Apple, who created the internet, who created all this stuff. And those people dropped out of college. Those people never finished high school. And they're signing checks for multi-billion-dollar corporations. So let's look at the president. We're not the precedent. We're no longer in the age of, back in the Stone Age anymore. So that's my opinion on it.
Nico, go ahead.
Right. So I'm coming from Finland, so I want to talk a little bit about the education system we have here, because I'm sure everybody's heard of Finland has the best education system in the world and blah, blah, blah. We certainly like to pride ourselves with that. But you got to ask, is that good enough? Like with the way the world is now, is it really good enough to be the best in the world in indoctrination camps? And, basically selling this idea of a welfare state. But the kids, innocent kids who had no choice but to go there. We actually have, if you don't, well, you can homeschool also in Finland, but it's kind of a trouble and it's not encouraged, especially. And you get punished if you don't take your kid to the camp. So that's kind of a sucky thing. I wouldn't go as far as to say that it's quite as bad as, for example, China or even US. I'm sure it's not. But then again, in a way, it can do a lot of harm, because people really think that this is the best. This is the best place to put your kids. And sure, there's some play also, but there's also a lot of memorizing, a lot of things, learning from heart, stuff that died at least 20 years ago, maybe even more. So we are actually preparing kids for the world that doesn't exist anymore, certainly doesn't exist in 20 more years. So that's certainly why I'm planning to homeschool my kid. And yeah, I think another thing is the curriculum. Like, what do you teach in the schools? Like, why is not economics and investment, basic survival skills taught to kids? Like, it's not that complex, except like the mainstream economics, of course, which is made complex on purpose, so people will stay away from that. Austrian economics, for example, is very straightforward and logical, so that could be taught to kids. And talking about kids, I want to do a shout out to a channel that is called CryptoCoinKid. If you guys haven't checked him out, please do. He's making awesome videos. He has like 7 of them now. Doesn't have many followers, but that kid is born on the year of Bitcoin, 2009. So he's pretty cool. He's making videos, and he's certainly educated in the topic. He's coding as well, and yeah, might do a show with him later. And he seems a cool kid. So please check him out.
So JW, we talked a bit about the socialization. So could you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that people use as an excuse, or maybe there's been enough propaganda to where people are actually concerned that if they educate their kids themselves, they won't be properly socialized. They won't be ready for the real world. And in a sense, that's true. If what you're trying to prepare these kids for is to be a good employee at the DMV or some, soulless corporation where they're going to come sit in a cubicle and they're going to do their time and they're going to die poor with a 401k, that is totally tapped out. If that's what you mean by the kind of person that you're trying to create and socialize, then yeah, you're not going to do that very well at home. But on the other hand, if what you're trying to do is create somebody that is independent thinking, right? That is the kind of person that you would want to be around, then there's no better place to create that kind of person than around you. Chances are, if you actually care about this topic enough to, be 15 minutes into it, you're probably a very normal guy, right? You're probably, I'm pretty sure our demographic is like 95% male, but yeah, you're probably a pretty normal dude, and you're the kind of person that you would want to be around, more or less, right? And if you want to create a kid that has those sort of tendencies, then they need to be around you. And even if you wanted to, even if you wanted to create a different sort of kid, you really have pretty much 2 options because of the way that mammals work. You can either have a mammal that spends time with the alpha male, right? Like my favorite example of this is the African elephants that were running rampant, and they were knocking over, they're basically killing everybody in villages. And it took a while to figure out that this was a new phenomenon because they're not typically very aggressive, but it was created because of the way that the hunting was working. They were taking out the old bull elephants. But this is like a normal thing for all mammals, right? Including humans. If you take an adolescent male and you don't expose them to an alpha male, they become really, really neurotic. And it's like I don't know exactly what's going on here, but the way that I think about it is it's like they're experiencing the weight of the world before they're ready for it, right? They need to be able to be around another alpha male and know that it's not their problem yet, and build up the right kind of relationship. So if you want to have a really weird, neurotic boy or man, take them and put them with a 26, 27-year-old girl and a bunch of other adolescent males. If you want to create somebody that is at least not, scratching holes in their arms and being weirdos and, having drug addiction and depression and on Ritalin and on, Zolf, all this crap, then you really just need to man up as a father and be a father and spend time with your kids. And again, it doesn't have to be a ton of time. You can have the kids out playing for 15 hours a day and spend 2 hours with them, teaching them how to read. And that's more than enough, right? For an 8-year-old kid, because they can't really focus that much anyway, right? I mean, little kids cannot sit down and fill out forms all day. It's not in their nature. So you really don't have that much opportunity to do that sort of work with them where their minds are ready for it, and they're going to learn anyway. So it's not that big of a burden. But again, the main thing as far as socialization goes is you need to decide what kind of kid you want to socialize. Because if you want a drone, then that's the right place to socialize them, is in a public or a private school. If you want an independent, motivated thinker, then you need to have them around you.
Yeah, great point. And I really experienced that at the Mises University, because there were so many young adults and older adults, actually quite a few older men, but they all had one thing in common, upon the many differences that we had, which was they were motivated, right? They really wanted to be there. And if you want to be there, if you really want to get educated, well, then you will, because that's always the first step, right? Is to want to do it. If you do not want to do it, well, then you're not going to get anywhere. And if you only have people around you in this educational setting that want to get out as soon as possible and that don't want to learn anything, well, this is just going to drag you down no matter how motivated you are. And so if you are then on the contrary, together with many, many people and students that do want to learn and that do want to get educated, this will pull you up to an even higher level. There's the saying, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And yes, this does imply upon others that you learn from the previous thinkers. But this also means that you can pull up each other, right? And if we all stand on the shoulders of each other, well, then we're kind of flying, right? So absolutely, we need to have people around us. We need to have peers where we can, talk together about this stuff and debate this stuff and see different viewpoints. Because if you are in this little bubble that you just have the positive feedback loop of the stuff that you want to talk about and that you like talking about, without any debate, without any disagreement, without any constructive criticism, then you're also not going to learn anything. So Rico, maybe talk about whatever, but how can we make sure that we do not end up in this bubble with only like-minded people?
That's a great thing we should talk about, because the powers that be don't want people to stand out. They want you to work at the DMV. They want you to flip burgers for their companies and corporations. They need you plugged into those batteries like the Matrix, okay? So here's the thing. Like, I'm going to fall back on the unprecedented of technology. We are here. Teach your kids how to code. Learn how to code yourself. I know that my child's, he's a 1-year-old, and my wife and I, we're pretty alternative. We actually met in New Zealand. And with our child's education, we thought Montessori style. And they have a really interesting Montessori practice in specific parts of Paris and all over France, where the teachers are the parents. And each parent teaches one subject. And you have to, you're supposed to arrive at from 2 to 3 or 2 to 4. And that's your chance to teach a subject. You're part of the class and your child is learning just like you are. And really what it brings me back to, and it just completely a little bit more general and more entertainment purposes, is the idea of being a Jedi or somebody who's learning about a force, And the force really is just your control of your mind and how you use the other parts of your brain. Because I'm going to tell you one thing. So many people don't use even more than like maybe 8% of their brain, if that, and that's giving them, a leadway. So much of your brain is not used. They don't want you to tap into that brain. And with the internet and with the age of technology, you learn about everything from the pineal gland to the things that are in your atmosphere and your environment that are destroying you. And really, it's the control. They put you in there because they don't want you to be outside the box. They don't need any more Bill Gates. They don't need any more people like Elon Musk, because it makes them worry, and then they're touching into that inner circle of, hierarchy money. So your question was, can you repeat the question?
Well, basically, how can we make sure that we do not have this positive feedback loop of
I think that people just need to go out there and like just literally learn. And I think people are doing that. I really do think that a big portion of the population is doing that. They're no longer listening. Maybe it's more in America because it's such a controlled system that people are like, they're sick. Americans hate control. They want to be liberated and free, and they want to be able to do everything they can. But they also want to empower people. And I think that with the system causing fear and control, it creates this antisocial mindset when you're in a public school. And I've seen my best friends when I was in high school, they had never stepped into a public school. First time in a public school, freshman year, I met them, they were twins. And by the end of 4 years, they were the most popular guys, and they had created a whole new like way of communicating with each other because they had never been around that antisocial. JW had said about when you're really weird because you're in a situation where you're not around alpha males and you're just being constantly living in a bubble of fear, pushed down, compressed, and compartmentalized. And we don't need that anymore. People need to go out there and try to educate their kids. I don't mean pull all your kids out of school, but maybe try it for a year, see what happens. Maybe they'll stop being so weird or hating you, and maybe the relationship will grow because they're growing. So don't fear the change. Be part of it, be part of that change. Don't be stuck in the same matrix that you're living every single day. You grow up, your kids go to the same school, and then you die. And then they go to the same school as their kids. It's just ridiculous. Let's move out of this mindset that we're stuck, because we're not stuck. We have technology. So, learn how to do these things. It's so easy.
Yes, it really is easy, especially if it is made easy for you and accessible for you, right? But of course, many people do not want us to be educated, and they want to keep us down. And, this is especially the case, of course, not limited to, but especially in China, where there is a great amount of censorship. So, Nico, I know you're into this, so what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. That's actually something I'm planning to do a video soon as well on my on another channel. But yeah, Chinese censorship is terrible, and how I know is that I've lived there. My wife is Chinese, and I also know a lot of Chinese people from the Finnish Bitcoin scene. And yeah, basically what they told me, like once they moved out of China, like how their world expanded. And it's like, I can't even imagine how that must be, because I've been free to the internet all my life. Well, I mean, as long as internet has been around, so since I was a teenager. So that's definitely a big downside for a lot of people living there and other oppressive countries like that. So that's something to keep in mind, that censorship resistance is actually super, super important. And of course, we here in the welfare states don't appreciate it quite as much, because we don't feel like, oh, what do we need censorship resistance for? I mean, I'm not doing anything illegal, and nobody does need censorship resistance until they do, and then it's too late. Your liberties go away one by one, and that's what we're experiencing right now. And the worst part in places like Finland is that people crave for that. This libertization kind of from the state, and this is the main incentive of public education, to suppress your curiosity, make you a slave for the system in the matrix. And they will teach, actually they literally teach us in the schools, in the primary school, how important taxation is, to keep the ball rolling. And they kind of instill this fear of like, you owe us, you owe the government, because we are giving you this free education and free this. And but you know what, like actually they're making you pay for the indoctrination of your kids. So that's pretty sick when you think of it that way. But this is what people want. And another thing is that it is encouraged for parents to put their careers in front of their kids, which is horrible. So you basically drop off your kid to the indoctrination camp, you go to another one yourselves that you call a job, where you trade your free time for money. Then you get home, you yell at your kids because you're tired, you don't want to play with them. They want to spend time with you, but then you also want to do your own stuff. You want to go to the gym, you want to go. I have a lot of friends who live like this, and they consider it a normal life. And for me, that's horrible. Like after I taste the freedom and I get to spend every day as much as I like with my kid. Of course, I work also, but I tend to work in the night when he's sleeping. And these are choices that we can all make. And what about Bitcoin, what is great is that we finally have a way that nobody can take this liberty away from us. It's a tool of self-defense in a way. And I want to say one more thing about like this natural curiosity of kids, which will I guarantee every kid is going to learn once you nurture them and nurture their natural curiosity. And every kid has something they are into and something they can be good at and great at. And then you just kind of feed into that. And my kid is into Bitcoin because I'm into Bitcoin. So obviously he wants to spend time with me. So it wasn't a hard sell for me to install a green address wallet for his iPad. And then, I kind of convinced him to break up his piggy bank and get some Bitcoin. And now he's like, every day he's checking his balance and he's like learning about this thing, and he sees it's growing, and it's, he understands that later, tomorrow he might have more. And then, that's investment basically. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Like we underestimate the kids. We think that they need like a lot of like we need to teach them, we need to put this information in their head. No, not at all. We are guides. We are not their like teachers. Well, in a way we are, but we are more like guides in this day and age, because there will be a time sooner than we think that they will know more. They will have access to more information that we could ever know how to access from the internet. So we should be the guides. And I like what you guys said about, you know, alpha males and also like alpha females. That's such an important role, like to have this kind of closeness to teach you about feelings, how to deal with conflicts, how to be constructive. This is much more important than learning any kind of like old books, in my opinion.
Hey, absolutely, Nico. And it's amazing that your kid already owns a few Bitcoin, and that you didn't just give it to him, but that he had to earn it, and that he actually had to buy it in exchange for it. Because then he will realize what this is, and that this is such a important technology, right? So that's
right.
really important.
Yeah, and he actually collected bottles for that. So.
Oh, that is fantastic. Doesn't matter what he has to do, but just putting in the extra effort of making a bit of extra money and then using it in a respectful way really teaches you a lot. I'm really grateful that I had my first job when I was like 8 years old, which might have been a bit shitty, you know, back then. But looking back on it now, it teaches you so much. Absolutely. And I also agree that you said that a teacher should be a guide, not a forceful, you know, dictator, but actually a helpful and a voluntary guide that will just, you know, go with them on this trip of education. Absolutely. So, Rico, you said that Montessori is one of those private schools that might be promising. And of course, you know, it's important that we try different approaches. But Montessori, you know, let's just get a bit more into this. So JW, what do you have to say about that?
So I love the matrix. I love the matrix analogy. And part of the reason that I like it is there's this idea that you could think that you're out of the matrix, but still be in the matrix, right? Like you could reach back and unplug yourself, but you're still plugged in. And you could do that again and again. And you never can know for sure that you're out of the matrix, right? The public school system and the private school system are set up exactly like that, right? People that put their kids in private school think that they're out of the matrix because they're not doing the public school thing. And they're sacrificing a lot financially to do so. And they think that they're doing something good. Then you have people that have pulled out of even the public school system, like the traditional or the private school system, the more traditional route. And they're trying these alternative schools where, like in Finland, I know they're doing a lot of stuff where the kids are just like out running wild, climbing up trees, like tons and tons of outdoor time, even when it's raining. And those guys feel like they've unplugged from the matrix, right? And then you have Montessori, which is sort of another alternative way. And they're thinking, well, you know, I unplugged from the public schools, and then I unplugged from the private schools, and now I'm doing Montessori. But there's two major elements of the matrix. And the first one is that the state, because the state, it's not like some complicated conspiracy, but the state has a tendency to want to be loved and worshiped and adored because it makes fleecing you easier, right? It's not rocket science. And the best way for them to do that is to step into the role of the father. It's not a coincidence that it's always the Führer or the great father or whatever that is used as symbols to worship the state. So you don't have to, you know, you don't have to be listening to the conspiracy theory radio to just realize that this is a very simple incentive structure. The state would rather be the thing that provides for you financially, and that you adore as a provider, right? And that is the role of a father. So the first part of the matrix is they just want to get you to outsource the rearing of your children in any way possible. There's plenty of homeschool groups that will help you do this. You'll still feel like you're homeschooling, but you're not the one that's actually spending time with your kids, and your wife is not the one that's spending time with your kids, but you feel like you're homeschooling, right? You get to check that box. So Montessori is like that, right? You come in for like an hour a week maybe, but at the end of the day, it is a salve on your conscience because you're off at work and your kids are being raised by other people. So that's the first major part of the matrix. The second part is control of the curriculum. As long as the state has control of the curriculum, which they're going to have, if you're in Montessori or if you're in any of these other things, they don't care. Like they're happy to let you feel good about, you're doing something different and you're rebelling against them. As long as when they're taught history from the perspective of the state. As long as when they're taught economics and where they're taught morality and all of these other things, it's from the perspective of the state, they'll let you feel good about it as long as they retain control. And there's a really sick irony here, and that is that, again, just back to mammals, the whole dating process, right? From the time that you're like a 15-year-old boy to the time that you're married, you put an incredible amount of time and energy and effort into landing the wife, into landing the woman that is the smartest possible, that can stand you, right? And if you somehow pull that off, the next thing you do is you send her to some shitty, unimportant job. And then you take your kids and you drop them off with women that you couldn't stand, right? You couldn't be in the same room with these people for 5 hours straight. And you give them the responsibility of raising your kids. So even if you weren't able to get a wife that is as smart as the girl that's at Montessori or whatever, it's also going to more than be overridden by the fact that she is like really, really motivated to take care of this kid that you guys have created, right? So even if she was dumber, which statistically she's not, right? Because these people are below average IQ. So she's probably smarter, but even if she was dumber, she would more than make up for that because she actually cares about your kid way more than anybody that you're throwing, $8 to $15 an hour to. So it is definitely something that I want to encourage everybody to just rebel against and avoid, even at the expense of breaking the law, if that's what's required.
Yes, absolutely. There's still always the problem that the state will have, will have some control over what the homeschooling is about or what the private schools is all about. So the difficult task is to really decouple all parts of education from the state. And I agree with you, JW, here. So Rico, what are your thoughts on that?
I actually never heard of that point of view from JW, but what JW just said, because Montessori schools are a bit new for me. It's more so my wife thought about it, and it's something that I've never really thought about before. I used to live in Portland, and long story short, I actually ended up going into a Montessori school. Not that I was attending it, but just because I had to drop something off for a company that I was working for, and it was the weirdest thing going into this huge, like almost like Kia looking thing. And yeah, he's right. There are people who are really excited to educate your kids, but in the end, you do not have control of the curriculum. And that's the one thing you do have control when you are homeschooling. Even if the state has you to makes you teach them a certain whatever guidelines, you can get them to memorize that stuff within a day, because there's memory things you can do, especially for kids. They're like sponges. But Montessori school is a bit archaic and chaotic when it comes to educating your children, because first of all, you're paying a lot of money. Second of all, it's new. No one really knows the way it's going to go. And it's a great way, I think, for some kids who are maybe a little bit older. But I think the great thing about homeschooling is that you have control over it. But I wanted to say one thing, that I think all, education is what you make of it. So I think even if you're stuck in public schools, or you choose to go private schools, or you just decide to go homeschool, or you want to try the Montessori way, the parents need to be the most involved. It's about the parents. Your parents need to be talking to the other parents, and they're talking to the parents, to the kids, and you need to be part of it. And you don't, even if you're just dropping them off, don't force them to if they don't want to go to school, then don't make them go to school. Take a day off work, figure it out. But do something for your kids, because once they're past that age, it's too late. You're no longer going to be able to hold their hand. They're not going to want to hold your hand. So education is much vital for the kids as it is for you, because if they're going to take care of you, I hope they're going to take care of you, or however it works, that you don't have to be the one taking care of them until, who knows, because of the education system, because you failed them by putting them there and not being a part of it. And it's not an easy system to be responsible for such a high demand on people that go to public schools. They probably have a lot of problems with their parents, because it's a social curve. It's an antisocial. It's this feeling of being compartmentalized, which is not good for the kids.
where I see relationships with homeschooled, and it blows my mind to see parents and kids and their kids so almost like keeping each other in check, because the kids are just as smart as the parents. So do your own due diligence, and you're gonna get whatever you give out. So if you're forcing your kids to go to school, and they're not doing good, take them out, because you're screwing them, and you're screwing yourself later on.
Yes, absolutely. And I do think that parents are the best teachers that a child can have, if they really realize that they are only guides and not dictators. So Nico, do you think that parents can give away that responsibility, and should they?
Of course not. You can't outsource parenthood. Like, that should be obvious. Certainly, it's obvious to me. And yeah, I like what Rico says as well. Like, if the kid likes it, sure. I mean, why not? Like, there is a social aspect to schools and these get-togethers. You can make some friends, you can make some contacts, you can learn how to deal with assholes as well. But yeah, like, if they're not doing well, if they don't enjoy it, you should take them off and you should figure out something else. And your own career should come after your kid every time. And they can't be like, I'm too busy to take care of my own kid. Like, what is that? Yeah, and learning from the kids is also one thing that is often disregarded. Like, we as parents, sometimes we tend to think like we divulge this information for these youngsters and we teach them, and so sometimes the attitude is quite incorrect. I've personally learned a lot, like, just by listening to my kid. Like, he thinks so different. Like, he's unbiased on everything, and he's pure. He doesn't have this. I can see that he starts to pick up things from the outside already. But mostly his mind is untainted. That's a huge benefit, that if we listen to them, what they have to say, and we can reflect, and that has been a huge richness for me as well. So it's not just that we take care of our kids, we also take care of ourselves, and we grow a relationship. And like, if we're talking about the old age, like in China, it's very common that the kids take care of their parents. And not so much in Finland, which is quite sad to see that actually we outsource the parenthood right now. Well, guess what? The kids are going to outsource our old age care. So we have these old lonely old people in houses, and basically, because the tax money is not channeled to those useless bags of human beings that don't produce any tax revenue, only an expense. So they don't really take care of them with the tax money. They just want them to, frankly, die as quickly as possible, which is super sad. And the kids are outsourcing because that's what you taught them. So that's something that I want everybody to think.
Oh yeah, absolutely, great points. And you talked about that they or the state is in some points really trying to get rid of us humans, and learning in a safe environment is super important, because if you're running away for your life because some attacker is behind you trying to kill you, you're not gonna pick up a Plato book and a Aristotle book and really go through it and you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. No, you are full of fear, and in a state of fear you are ignorant by definition, and you will not pick up any information, and you will not even have a chance to understand that information. So JW, is the current schooling environment that we have actually secure?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't think it is at all. And if you think about again, just thinking about humans, it's kind of sad that I can sort of debunk so much just by saying humans are mammals, right? Like, as soon as you acknowledge that humans are mammals, there's all kinds of stuff that comes into play that's really obvious, right? So, like, one of the things about the alpha male's role, the father, is that he's supposed to be a protector, right? And that's also one of the reasons that we think that adolescent males get neurotic if they're in an environment where there's no alpha male around. They're stressed out. They should be neurotic because they're at the brink of destruction all the time, right? And our brains are hardwired to behave like this because we sense that there's risk around. So the way that we do this in public schools, especially in the United States, we've got this really dialed in pretty well. We take adolescent males, we put them in an environment where they're not safe. There's a lot of bullying, there's a lot of violence. It's not always, super crazy like stab you or shoot you violence, but there's a lot of really, really miserable experiences that the average 9-year-old in a public school goes through. He's probably either a predator or prey in that environment. And even if he's a predator, he's probably a prey to somebody else. And so what we do is we put them in that environment. The only people that they can go to are 26-year-old girls that really don't have any way to deal with it, right? You can only call a parent and ask them to come in because their kid's being mean so many times. And if you talk to any public school teacher, they very rarely do that. Because they know how pointless it is, right? Like you might do that the first couple of years that you're a teacher. When you see cruelty, you might try to deal with it and get parents involved. But soon after that, like that's probably wears off in the first like 2 months and you give up on that. So what we do is we put them in these environments, they abuse each other. And then when they act out, we medicate them. And we medicate them until they're, semi-vegetated all day. And when that doesn't work and things really blow up, some of these kids, they lose their minds for reasonable reasons, right? Like you look at all of the kids that end up going on a school shooting rampage, that pattern is always there. These kids have been abused and worked over violently and viciously for years and years before they get to the point of losing their mind and trying to kill everybody around them. And so then we look and we go, oh, geez, how did this happen? This is such a foreign, weird thing, right? When it would happen to any mammal that you put in that circumstance. And I love the point that after we do all this to our kids, we realize, how hard it is to keep our money in our 401k. We end up getting wrecked by 2008 or something like that. And we don't have kids that give a crap about us because we didn't care about them. So it really is a sick cycle that we've got going.
Yeah, it truly is a shame, the state of the current education. But let's not be too depressive about it. Let's actually talk on how we can fix it. And we here, of course, at the World Crypto Network are a little bit into Bitcoin. And of course, it took us quite some time, I think all of us, of course, quite some time to really understand it. Yeah, we got the information. Yeah, it's Bitcoin. It has a blockchain. It's decentralized. You can make transactions. But that is just stuff that people tell you about it. But again, only external information doesn't help you in understanding it. Understanding is internal. It comes from you. So for me personally, the first time it really made click was when I got the information in a nice package by Andreas Antonopoulos, right? I remember exactly the day, February 23rd, when I watched my first Andreas video. And I immediately signed up for my for an exchange, and on February 24th, I bought my first few Satoshis, 2016. So for me, it was just this specific packaging of one of our greatest speakers that we have here, one of the greatest professors that we have here. Yes, he does not teach at a university because he doesn't need to. He teaches everywhere. And that is something that I really admire about this guy, that he goes out there and he teaches people all the time. And to this day, I watch pretty much every single video that man puts out there. Why? Because it's high quality information. And yes, it might be technical sometimes, but that's kind of good. And he can explain this technical information in a really accessible way. And if you have this accessible information, then it is much easier to understand it. So Rico, who was one of your teachers that really made you realize what Bitcoin is and why it is so important?
One of my teachers? Mike's? Is that what you said? Oh,
yes, exactly.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Andreas Antonopoulos is one of my main teachers as well. I got into Bitcoin in the middle of 2015 just by stumbling upon research on sound money. And it all came from watching a documentary called Tomorrow, and it's about these communities all over the world, mainly Europe and Great Britain, that are using their own currency. And the idea of what is currency, what is exchangeable means, whether it's like in Africa, they're using a phone number pad, a phone code to, exchange, because they don't have banks, and they just run across the thing, and these phones work all over Africa. or, you know, if it's somewhere else, like an exchange of barter systems where, you know, you barter something for something else where there is no money exchange. So sometimes you don't even need currency. But what I learned from this whole thing about Bitcoin is the fact that it's a solution. We had talked about it earlier about you had said something about somebody that you had met and known that had lived in a war their entire life. And Bitcoin was the answer for them. And that's kind of what it was for me when I had been researching, because I am a bit of, I like to do research and I don't believe that we're being told the truth. So I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist, so I'm going to go ahead and stand by that because that's fine. But I think that's what the world has brought us to. And that's where I was like, you know, there's got to be another way. And this documentary was like, there is another way. It's by turning to your community and using them to help you, to help them, to help themselves, to help them grow, rather than having to living in oppression because you're literally feeding to a hierarchy because they need your lifeblood, they need you to work, they need you to feed this machine. You know, JFK said it really, really well. It's a machine, you know, and it's just taking everything out. And it's bigger than any of us. And it's probably bigger than the control themselves. It's too big. So Bitcoin was a huge, it was a resolution. And I guess I have to admit that the people that are more in the space, like Roger Ver, Jimmy Song, I hate to say it, Tone Vays, all these people that I kind of just watch, but I take all of their information with a grain of sand, and even then I don't follow them to the core. It's more just like bits and pieces. Max Kaiser, and then going all the way to economics. All the Mises lectures that I watched in the last week, I was just cramming myself in. Those guys are my heroes. The people that are here heroes are the people that are doing this today in the world of Bitcoin. The people who are applying it, people who are making mistakes. And I think that we can all be your own heroes. You should be out there doing what you can to fill the void in your life with some cryptocurrency, with some sound money, with a new internet of things, okay? And we need new resolutions. JW, I wanted to say one really quick thing and just touch base on what you had talked about with the shootings, because that's what we have reached. We are in a war. Bitcoin is our fire. It is our protection. And if we can get off the system, it could save us from a lot of bad things. And the schools are created because they're built upon platforms to help keep people from from being good and being really something that's going to change the world. They don't want that. So we are living in a war. And if you don't see, you're sending your kids off into these military camps where you don't know if some other kid has a gun or the cops or who's going to go in there and what they're being brainwashed with or fed, which I have a whole thing about the food, let alone in the public schools. I wasn't even allowed to eat food in public schools because my parents were completely against it. So this is back in the 90s. So I just have to say that we are in a war, and Bitcoin is the fire. And for the people who that I follow, I'm always following people on Twitter. I'm like, wow, I didn't even know this person existed. It's great, even like Andy Hoffman, great, all these people, those are my heroes because we're living in a new world. This is the wild, wild west of everything. You can control everything you want. So I think everybody can be their own heroes, and I have my own heroes, and those are the people that I'm learning are applying this stuff to their own life. Even the people that are creating ICOs, not the scammers, the people that are creating ICOs for good things, even if they don't make it, like salt or something. All right.
Yes, absolutely. Great points that you bring up as always, Rico. Rico and Nico is really confusing. But yeah, actually talking about Nico, do you think that we can kind of take the experience that we gathered during the internet, having this newly advanced, new technology that nobody understands, and eventually everyone is using it, right? So at one point, the people will get educated enough to be comfortable with it. Can we take some of that experience and apply it to this new digital technology, which is Bitcoin? And where do you maybe see some differences of those two?
Absolutely, Max. That's what I like to make the comparison of the internet in 1994 and up to 1996, I think it was quite marginal. And I think Netscape came out 95 probably, so that made it kind of mainstream. But at that time, it's like I'm old enough, so I was a teenager, so I was like talking to girls over internet with like, I went to the library and used this text-based links operating system and talked to girls, and that was it for me. I was like, wow, it was so obvious to me. This is the way all communication is going to be done in the future. And everybody laughed at me. Everybody's like, why don't you talk to real people? Like, what are you doing there? Like, just in the dark in the computer room by yourself. And for me, it was like, I tried to tell people like, look, you can do these things. You can send messages to anybody. You don't have to send letters. And people were like, nah, like, that's useless. So it's kind of like the same thing right now, right? This is like the email for money. And to that end, like, who taught me about Bitcoin? I think not a lot of people can say that their mom taught them about Bitcoin. Like, my mom schooled me about Bitcoin actually in 2010, which is pretty impressive that my mom knew Bitcoin and I didn't at that time. I was a huge nerd, but my mom is an engineer as well. And the reason why she knew that is because her old alma mater university apparently housed some of the Bitcoin developers, early developers at that time. And they were running actually a mini golf in the city I'm from, Tampere. And they took Bitcoin, and we were playing that with my mom. I was like, huh, Bitcoin, what is that? And then my mom gave me the lecture. And of course, I have to say that she didn't really understand what it was. It was just like magic internet money, right? Like everybody was probably thinking at that time. And I was mining it briefly for a while, but then I got a real job and I graduated, decided to do something more profitable. So that's how I got first into it. And then later, of course, I realized that, oh, what happened to the price? Like around 2016 or something like that. And I was like super into it then. And then I finally read the Bitcoin white paper. And then I was like, oh, it's like email for money, but it's like, you can't send the same email twice. This is changing everything, absolutely everything. And after that, I was like, I've dropped everything. I just started watching every single video I can find. Like I found Andreas at that time, which was obviously super great resource for everything. And then, yeah, I started making my own content about half a year ago, and here we are. And I tried to do the same thing I did around the internet and just try to get as many people in as possible, because it's still early days. And about education, like, yeah, Bitcoin education is super important. But what I think is even more important is education of the current system, because it's super hard to understand why do you need better money if you don't understand what's wrong with your money now. Like, Visa works fine. You can buy a coffee with it. I can buy anything I want with PayPal. Yeah, sure, until you can't, right? And then it might be too late. So where you probably want to hedge yourself a little bit for the upcoming disaster, because people are not being schooled about these topics. People are taught that living off debt is okay. It's encouraged, highly encouraged. All money is debt, and this is a sick system we live in, and this is even more important to school people with.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nico, this is a fantastic story. And the chat is going crazy. And they're saying that you should tattoo yourself that my mom taught me about Bitcoin, which I think will be a nice tattoo and actually always a fun bar story to talk about. You also talked about onboarding, and I 100% agree, man. This is so important. And onboarding, of course, both is about educating the people that the old ship is sinking and just telling them, hey, there's another ship. You should probably get on there. And this is incredibly important. And I've been doing that for quite some time now. Though, however, I have to tell you, it doesn't pay that well. Actually, it really doesn't pay at all. So JW, maybe could you talk about how can we combine the educational aspect, the onboarding aspect, with a real business to actually stay profitable?
Yeah, totally. Before I do that, though, I want to say something to Oliver. He's in the chat, and he said he's 15 years old and he's got 4 years of programming experience. That is awesome. Hopefully you're getting paid. Hopefully you're making money at this point. If not, you should be within a year. And that's incredible, because you are going to get paid to be educated. You're going to be solving problems and exploring the most interesting, I think, part of our universe right now, which is software and building tools and software. And people are going to be paying you for the pleasure of doing that. So your parents are awesome. And if depending on your skill set, reach out to me, because you might be able to make a bug fix here and there on MathBot, and I will pay you. I'll even pay you in Bitcoin. Because that's awesome, and I want to support you, and because you probably can do it cheaper than I can pay other people to do it. because you're 15, so you don't have a lot of great opportunities to get hired for jobs. So I'm going to take advantage of that, but negotiate hard with me. All right. So back to hit me up at Weatherman I am on Twitter, Oliver. Okay, so as far as education goes and making it profitable, like 3 weeks ago, I put together a class on Bitcoin, how to invest in cryptocurrencies in general, basically cover all the Austrian economics that you really should know before you start trying to invest in cryptocurrencies. And I kind of did it on a lark. I was kind of, I just got done throwing some grenades over at the TA guys. And I thought, oh, it'd be fun to just spin up a course and teach people the opposite of TA, since there seems to be a lot of interest in course on TA. So I thought, mostly as just a really hard troll, I'd put 6 or 8 people through the course. And I had already dabbled with it, but I still had a lot of work to do. So I hadn't actually finished the course, but I had to finish the course because after just putting that out there, I had about 30 people that had signed up in a really short period of time. I ended up raising the price from $200 to $300. I extended the course a little bit too, but you know, three weeks later, I've got about $10,000 in Bitcoin, and I've put about 30 people through what I feel like is a really good introduction to the economics that they need. So there is a lot of opportunity to make money in Bitcoin and in cryptocurrencies in general with education, if you can find the right way to do it. And entrepreneurship is brutally hard, but there are some interesting opportunities. MathBot is also, I think, an interesting way to make money on Bitcoin, because once I realized what was happening with Bitcoin, MathBot became more attractive to me, because Bitcoin is going to defund the state. And if the state is defunded, all the services that the state provides are going away. What better opportunity for entrepreneurs could you ask for than all of the incumbents losing all their funding? So something like MathBot, where we teach math, we'll do fine competing with the state, but Bitcoin is going to continue to take money away from the state and make it harder for them to compete with us. And we're going to be using Bitcoin to make the experience even better. So I think you got to look for opportunities like that in Bitcoin. Don't launch some, competitor of Bitcoin. That's not a good way to make money. But look at the way that Bitcoin is going to change the landscape and look for opportunities there to solve problems. And I think there's plenty. It seems like there's endless amounts of money that can be made solving problems that are in the space.
Yes, absolutely, and I do agree that there's a lot of potential here in this market. Of course, Bitcoin is going to change the world. JW, on your screencast, it says Bitcoin is going to end slavery. Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're in it for. And I myself have been struggling with the minute details on where to make money. Because honestly, I don't care that much about making money. I do want to end slavery, though. Like, that is my highest priority. And information are non-scarce goods. So if I have an idea about Bitcoin and I talk to people about it and I give them that information, I still retain the information. As a matter of fact, I will probably understand it even better. And because I keep talking about Bitcoin nonstop, more and more people will end up using it, which will of course be good for me because I do own a few Satoshis, and those will go up in purchasing power, right? But further, we're gonna end slavery, So that is why sharing the information is so important. But of course, the information is non-scarce and I can share it as much as I want, but my time is not, because I can only do one thing at a time, nothing but multitasking. And so this means I have to allocate my time, I have to allocate my resources. And it's always tricky because as soon as something is scarce, there is a price for it, right? Because the only way to know where to allocate those resources is on the free market with free exchange. And of course, with the prices that arise out of that. And therefore, a teacher that is giving a lecture, the information that he is talking about is non-scarce, and he can share it as freely as possible. But his working hours, his time, is actually scarce. And that is something that he has to get paid for, right? And so it's always interesting where to find this little, the line on where to charge for something and where to just hand it out free. It's tricky. What I personally decided to do was focus do all the education for private individuals basically for free. They can give me a few Satoshis if they like, they don't have to. I just want to show them how this works. However, if I talk to companies, so already established companies that do want to, well, use this product to make a profit, right? Then I really am comfortable with charging for them. And so what I am doing with a couple of friends here in Germany is we started this CoinUp consulting thing where we just onboard small to medium-sized German Mittelstand companies, which are family-owned and operated businesses. And we're going to give them a bunch of information for free because it's a non-scarce good. But then the interesting thing here where we have scarcity is giving them real information and real applied information, applied understanding on how to use Bitcoin, specifically for their business case. And I do think that this is a nice way to combine spreading the word and ending slavery and making a bit of a profit and continue doing this. So who's next? I think Rico is next, right? So Nico, what do you want to talk about?
Well, this is all about education. So let's talk about applied education. Let's talk about life. Let's talk about how everybody who's listening right now, you're ahead of the curve because you're listening to people talk about something that will be talked about massively once it is become adopted. And ETFs, ETPs, governments, they all go domino effect. Everybody goes haywire. I don't want to say anything, but I have a feeling I know which country is going to go first. Point in case. So I was thinking is applied education in this world of Bitcoin is altcoins. And I really hate to talk too much about altcoins. People get kind of shifty about it, but we are in a bull run. And if people haven't looked at their altcoins, then they're missing out on the market. And the market is digital, okay? The market is projects. The market's going to be the things you're using tomorrow, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on getting your cup of coffee at Starbucks, you're going to be using these, and whether it's a Visa card that's got Bitcoin attached to it. There are some great projects out there, okay? I want you guys all to just do a little bit of chance and go out there and read some white papers. It's a great chance to read about white papers in a market that's still at the bottom of a bull run. So I always like to look at the market as I'm looking up, like up, and it's going up. And when I'm at the bottom, I always feel safe because I always kind of get confirmation, and then it starts to see it go up, and I get that confirmation it's going back up. And that's a good feeling, okay? But it's always nice to go down if you're investing. So point in case is go and apply your own self, whether that means you volunteer for the ideas of talking about Bitcoin, or maybe you want to get into running your own alts, but you have this idea and you're like, I don't know how to do it. So you just contact somebody on Twitter or on GitHub or on their whatever page, you guys. So think about what you can do to get on this market now, because this is a massive ton of trains. They're heading one way, and a lot of them aren't going to make it. They're going to bust within a year, 6 months. They may not even make it on the markets or exchanges. You see these ICOs. I just talked about this in my last episode. It's a really short 14 minutes about alt and ICOs. This is the market of tomorrow, whether or not you like it. And if you do, just go to CoinMarketCap and just look at some coins. You can be like, whoa, you know, there's a chance to get some more Satoshis. If you're a serious maximalist, then you will look at the market in front of you, because Bitcoin is a great thing to, it's a gold to me. So I think it's going to run out. And once it's run out, you're going to have to, it's just like gold, you know, so, but it's digital. And once it hits that number and people are running for it, I don't want to be there. So, but the altcoins can help you in becoming more maximalist, I guess you could say, by educating yourself. So educated applications is either researching white papers, simple as, don't go for the FUD before you make any decisions. Don't do anything until you know what you're doing. And if you're trading, don't trade it off of the idea of fiat. You're trading on Satoshis. So be aware that this is an exciting time for everybody. Whether or not you even own Bitcoin, maybe you want to own something else, get into it. I'm not telling you what you should get into, because I'm not telling you what to believe in your world, but I want you to, you know, enable yourself, because that is education. That is the education. Whether you're a young child of 15 years old, Oliver, that's awesome. I commend you, you know, because that's the most important thing. Is it doesn't matter how old you are. Age is just a number. Okay, it's your decisions in life that make you whatever you want to be. So I think applied education here is research and application, whether it's volunteer time or whether you really want to put forth the good foot and be like, I think this idea can roll and I'm going to watch this thing go up. So we'll see. But I think this is a good time for people to apply education, which is right in front of your hands.
Yeah, absolutely. Great points that you bring up. And yes, age is just a number, and it really doesn't matter that much. You know, your deeds, your actions are what make you. And I agree with you 100% there. And you talked about the altcoin market, and you know, I like the altcoin market. Why? Because it gives competition. It gives us choice. We now have anarchy in money. Go to towardsliberty.com/anarchy if you want to contribute to my bachelor thesis, right? And this is really nice because, yeah, now you, the user, can choose whichever currency or token or whatever you want to use. Because not all tokens that we have here are currencies, right? If you want to use a currency, you might want to stick with Bitcoin, you know, because it's probably the best currency that we have right now, in my opinion. But again, it's my opinion. If you have another opinion, do it. But you know, the thing is that there are other projects as well. And those projects, most of them are shit. Yeah, go to deadcoins.com if you really want to find out how many coins are really shit. But yeah, you know, there are some projects that are out there and they're really trying to do something. And I think Beconomy might be one of those projects that is kind of nice. So Nico, you're involved in that. So talk a bit about what you're doing there.
Sorry, I'm involved in what? I didn't hear that.
Beconomy.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. So you were talking about how to get regular people in. So my point of view is we gotta find better ways for using Bitcoin. We have to find very user-friendly user interfaces. At the moment, there's not a single one wallet or a payment system that I find good enough for a general population use. People are not going to download the app and use it unless it's, you know, nicely designed, it's easy to use, it's you know, super easy. You get something when you use it. So we are working with this kind of protocol level thing called Beconomy, and Max is also on that project. And the idea is to provide user interface for Bitcoin. So the underlying asset will be Bitcoin, and we would be using some kind of a sidechain solution like a rootstock or similar to create a smart contract on top of it, which would then we would have an escrow for peer-to-peer trade. We would have a treasury model for development and pay the initial airdrops to lure in new users. So basically how it would work is people would get, once you register with your unique phone, you would download the Beconomy app. You will get, let's say, $20 worth of Bitcoin. But by default, you will just see your local currency. So you will see that you have this many, like, let's say, diamond points or whatever points. Actually, they are Bitcoins, and they are denoted in your local currency. So you don't actually need to know, just like you don't need to know how TCP/IP protocol works to be able to use Facebook. You don't need to know how Bitcoin works to use the best money in the world. So this is what we are working on now. And if anybody is interested, just drop me or Max a line, and then we are open source completely all the way, and we welcome anybody who can contribute and want to contribute. We have several technical and game theory problems we need to solve, like dispute resolutions and these kind of things, and we are working on a decentralized protocol level application, the app, that will help maybe hopefully onboard people. And this is, like, in my opinion, the ultimate business plan in the long term, to get as many people, make Bitcoin mainstream. We all have Bitcoin, that's not a secret. And once we have the mainstream adopting it, we will have a good business model there. So that's something we're working on now. In terms of about education, I highly recommend anybody thinking about investing. Maybe you want to get in and you're watching now. Please make one of your first priorities to read Saifedean's Bitcoin Standard book. It's great. And what he says in one of the first chapters is the first investment you should make is you don't go to an exchange. You don't go to Coinbase and start buying. You gotta put in 2 weeks, very intensive level training, educate yourself, watch as many videos, read as many books and articles as you can, try to understand what it is. Certainly read the Saifedean's book and at least the Bitcoin white paper. So that will be your first really important investment. You can't go around that. You will get wrecked, and I guarantee that. And another thing about getting wrecked is altcoins. I don't think they're going to go away, but they do serve as a test bed for Bitcoin, and maybe there will arise a challenger for Bitcoin. I don't think there's a serious challenger at the moment. And for me, myself, I got into altcoins because of the hype, and there was like, wow, all these gains. And then I thought it's better than Bitcoin, and then I got wrecked. I got wrecked some more, and then I learned a lesson, a valuable lesson, that Bitcoin is the king, at least for now. It's the store of value. So I think actually the altcoins are really good for Bitcoin, because people want variety, people want to test things and try out things, and then they will end up to Bitcoin. That's what happened to a lot of people that I talked to. First, they got like, oh, Bitcoin, that's super interesting. Oh, but look at these altcoins, I'm going to get a Lambo. And then once they get wrecked enough, they will say, oh, well, you know what, I'm just going to hodl Bitcoin anyway. So I think altcoins are good. They're not going to go away. Even BitConnect token, I think, is still trading over $1, which is outrageous to me. I don't think anything goes to zero. About information sharing and open source entrepreneurship, I think the age of hoarding, information hoarding, is long gone. By sharing the best ideas, you get the best minds working on problems. And then, like, they're not the best minds of the world. They're not going to help you make money with your shitcoin. They're not. They're going to go to a project that is going to help the world and at the same time make some money. So open source entrepreneurship, while not a fast way to get rich, certainly a slow way to get rich, and probably richer, and a sustainable way. So that's what we're doing kind of with the WeEconomy. So if you want to check it out, weeconomy.io. And if you want to join for the alpha, alpha.weeconomy.io. So check it out.
Yeah, I really like this project, and I do think that it is kind of a, you can compare it to something like a decentralized exchange, like HODL or BISC, but just not for fiat currency versus Bitcoin, or Litecoin versus Bitcoin, but your goods and services versus Bitcoin, but in a hopefully secure and hopefully decentralized and peer-to-peer fashion. So this is just one of the many projects that do try to make something good, and it might not work out. Actually, the most likely it is not going to work out, because most new projects do fail. And this is really important, especially when investing in projects. 99% of all those projects will fail. Yes. And it really does take a dedicated team and a hardworking team of making it work. And I do think one of this good and dedicated team is, well, of course, in the economy, but further at mathbot.com. So JW, what's that all about?
Yeah, so MathBot is my attempt. There's a lot of folks involved now at this point. I think about 5 people. To create an alternative to, well, let me say that more strongly. It is an attempt to take away the crown jewel of government schools, which is pretending to teach math, by making math free, easy, and fun, so that everybody can get access to it, and they can learn math and programming while they program a robot to move around the screen and solve problems. So definitely check it out, and give me any feedback that you guys have. Best way to reach me is on Twitter at WeathermanIM. And I completely concur. Saifedean's book is the best book on Bitcoin that's been written to date. In my crypto investing and trading class, I have Saifedean come in for an hour, and then also Eric Lombroso come in for an hour. And it's great to have Saifedean, because he knocks any economic points just completely home. So if you're interested in that, also hit me up at WeathermanIM.
Yes, absolutely. First of all, MathBot is really amazing. I really enjoyed playing through all those levels. And it's fascinating that you actually do learn quite a lot of stuff. So I'm not a coder, not a developer whatsoever, but I really did pick up some, and that was really useful. Plus, it was fun. It's a nice problem-solving game. And 100% read Saifedean's book. There's no question. And by the way, just as a little self-plug, Nico and I think it was it JW who did the interview together with Saifedean. By the way, this is already, after only, a week, it is the 10th most watched video here on the World Crypto Network, which is amazing, and really, truly, it is well-deserved. Not because of us, but because of Saifedean, because he really is amazing, and he knows what he's talking about. So this is something absolutely you got to check out. Together with mathbot.com and the investing class with JW, it is absolutely worth it. So Rico, what are you up to all the time that you're not here on World Crypto Network, and where can the people find you?
Sorry, I was on mute. When I'm not here, I am usually learning French, and I have to take courses here. And I'm an entrepreneur. I'm trying to get people involved into Bitcoin who are new, especially people who I don't know, like my clients. If you guys want to find me, go to Rico Coin Report. You can find me on YouTube. I also have a website. It's ricocoinreport/.wixsite.com/2018. And I talk about it in my episodes. You guys can just find me or Twitter at Rico Coin. Sorry, at Rico Coin. It's super late in Paris. It's like 1:50 in the morning. So yeah, I think we're all kind of spent. But you guys, check me out there if you want.
Yes, it is late in Paris and in Germany, but it is even later in Finland. So let's all, say thank you to Nico, who stays up till like 3 o'clock just to provide you high quality content. So Nico, thank you very much for joining us. And where can the people find out more about you?
Always a pleasure. I actually do like to work in the night. You can reach me at Twitter at Omnifin, double N at the end. And I'm pretty active also on Telegram. You can find me under N1KOFI. That's my nick. So if you want to drop me a direct line and have a chat, that will be much appreciated. And I can direct you to all my open source projects that I'm part of.
Yes, it really was a pleasure talking to you. And it's always nice. We reached 100 live viewers, which is fantastic. We had some amazing questions in the chat that unfortunately we did not get through. But please always, continue the discussion and talk to each other in the chat. Don't be just silent and then sit around in the dark, but actually, interact with the community. So thank you all for joining us. You can find me mainly on Twitter at HillebrandMax. Most of the stuff on YouTube I do on the World Crypto Network, but I also do have a own YouTube channel called Max Hillebrand. A couple nice interviews there, so you might check that out as well. And my personal website is towardsliberty.com. And one day I might just tell you how I got that domain name, which is a nice story, but it's going to be a secret for now. Go to towardsliberty.com/Bitcoin if you want to learn more about Bitcoin. Go to towardsliberty.com/economics if you want to have some nice reading lists that you can go through, which will take like 2 years, 3 years to go through all of them. Most of the books are for free, thanks to the Mises Institute. But yeah, talking about the Mises University, I did 18 live videos in 1 week, just talking about the economics and Bitcoin. It was really fun. I enjoyed myself very much. Link is, you'll find it on the WCN YouTube channel. But one thing that I would like also to plug is my bachelor thesis on anarchy and money and why we neither need nor want government regulation in cryptocurrencies and money, and especially Bitcoin. So you can find that at towardsliberty.com/anarchy. Of course, it is published under the Creative Commons license and written in the open source writing approach. So your feedback, your comments, whatever, is 100% appreciated. And of course, you will get credit for all of that. And yeah, we had a fantastic panel today talking about free and Libre and private education and how you can increase your Bitcoin wisdom, which is, again, not just information, not just understanding, but actually going out there and doing stuff. And that's what we all need to do. Each of us has to put in a little effort, and soon we will end slavery with this. So thank you, JW, thank you, Rico, and thank you, Nico, for joining us here. It was fantastic talking to you. And I hope we can do this again soon. See you on the next show. Bye-bye.